Have you ever noticed how we tend to resist pain and suffering as if they don't belong in our lives? We often believe that a life without suffering is what we deserve. Yet the reality is that pain is an unavoidable part of the human experience. According to Buddhism, our suffering intensifies not because of the pain itself, but because of how we respond to it. When we resist, avoid, or distract ourselves from pain, we only deepen our mental and emotional suffering. But what if there's a different way to approach life's struggles, one that leads to peace rather than more pain? In today's video, we're going to explore how Buddhism teaches us to navigate painful situations, using suffering not as something to run from, but as a tool to enrich our lives. The Buddha offered a profound perspective on suffering that allows us to see it not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Let's take a closer look at how we can adopt this mindset and move through life's inevitable challenges with more grace and resilience. Understanding pain and suffering through a Buddhist lens. Buddhism teaches us that suffering is part of life's very fabric. To expect a life without pain is to deny the reality of existence itself. The Buddha didn't promise a life without suffering. Rather, he showed a path to live peacefully despite the suffering. In one of his teachings, the Buddha used a powerful simile to explain how we experience pain. He said that when we are struck by physical pain, like being hit by an arrow, we feel both a bodily sensation and immediately afterward, a mental reaction, much like being struck by a second arrow. The first arrow is the unavoidable physical or emotional pain, but the second arrow represents the suffering we create through our mental and emotional reactions, such as worry, fear, or frustration. The Buddha reminds us that while pain is inevitable, worrying about that pain is a choice. The first arrow may be unavoidable, but the second arrow is self-inflicted. When we accept that suffering is a part of life, we can stop resisting it and learn to embrace it as a part of our journey. This is easier said than done, of course, but once you understand this fundamental principle, your approach to pain will change completely. The nature of suffering. Why do we suffer? We suffer not because pain exists, but because we expect life to be free of it. This expectation leads to frustration when things don't go our way. We chase pleasures to distract ourselves from discomfort, believing that temporary pleasures will alleviate our pain. But in reality, these distractions only provide short-lived relief and often create more suffering in the long run. When we face hardship, many of us turn to external sources to numb the pain: alcohol, food, excessive social media use, or other indulgences. These are what the Buddha referred to as sensual pleasures. And while they might give us a momentary escape, they do not solve the root of our suffering. We become dependent on these distractions, and soon we find ourselves needing more and more to escape the pain. The Buddha doesn't say that enjoying life's pleasures is wrong, but he warns that using them as a way to avoid suffering only adds layers to our suffering. When we rely on external things to distract us from our inner pain, we lose the opportunity to explore that pain and grow from it. Seeing pain as a teacher. Instead of running from pain, Buddhism teaches us to look at it directly and see it for what it is, a part of life. When we stop fighting against the reality of suffering, we can learn to navigate it with wisdom and understanding. The Buddha said, "Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional." This means that while we can't control the existence of pain, we do have control over how we respond to it. The Buddha spoke of 8 worldly conditions that everyone experiences: gain and loss, fame and disgrace, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. These conditions are like the two sides of the same coin. Just as you cannot have light without darkness, you cannot have joy without experiencing pain. Understanding this balance helps us release the expectation that life should only bring happiness and success. Once we accept that both pain and pleasure are natural parts of life, we can stop resisting the difficult moments. When we no longer feel the need to distract ourselves from suffering, we free ourselves from the constant cycle of avoidance and dependence on fleeting pleasures. The power of mindfulness in painful situations. So how do we begin to work through pain healthily? One of the key practices in Buddhism is mindfulness, being fully present with your emotions and experiences without judgment. Mindfulness allows you to observe your pain, whether it's physical or emotional, without getting caught up in the mental anguish that often accompanies it. For example, when you feel hurt or disappointed, instead of distracting yourself with social media or indulging in something that temporarily makes you feel better, try sitting with the feeling. Notice where the pain shows up in your body. Is it a tightness in your chest, a lump in your throat, or a knot in your stomach? Breathe into that space and allow yourself to experience the emotion without labeling it as bad or good. As you practice mindfulness, you may start to notice that the pain begins to shift and transform. What once felt unbearable might soften as you simply allow it to exist without resistance. This is not to say that the pain will disappear, but your relationship with it will change. You'll develop a greater sense of peace, even in discomfort. Stop running. Face the pain with courage. When we stop running from pain and begin to face it with courage and mindfulness, we take the first steps toward liberation. By accepting suffering as part of the human experience, we develop resilience and inner strength. We learn that we can endure difficult situations without falling apart. Buddhism doesn't promise that life will be easy, but it offers a way to navigate the inevitable hardships with grace and wisdom. When we stop seeking pleasure as an escape and begin to cultivate acceptance, we open ourselves to a deeper sense of peace that isn't dependent on external circumstances. Pain is a part of life, but it doesn't have to control your life. The next time you face a painful situation, remind yourself, this too is a part of my journey. Embrace the pain as an opportunity for growth, rather than something to be feared or avoided. Living with peace amidst life's ups and downs. The Buddha's teaching on the 8 worldly conditions, gain and loss, fame and disgrace, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, reminds us that life is always changing. No matter how hard we try to hold on to the good moments, they will eventually pass. And no matter how difficult a situation may feel, it too will change. By recognizing the impermanence of all things, we learn to ride the waves of life with more ease. We stop clinging to pleasure and stop resisting pain. Instead, we cultivate a mindset of acceptance and peace, knowing that everything is temporary. This understanding allows us to live more fully in each moment, appreciating the joys when they arise and facing the hardships with grace. Embrace pain as a part of life's journey. In the end, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. The Buddha teaches us to embrace pain as a part of life's journey, rather than something to run from. By facing our suffering head-on and practicing mindfulness, we can transform our relationship with pain and experience a deeper sense of peace. Next time you encounter a difficult situation, remember that you have the power to choose how you respond. Instead of distracting yourself with temporary pleasures, try sitting with the discomfort. Observe it, learn from it, and allow it to deepen your understanding of life. Pain is not your enemy, it's a teacher.